I think part of the reason we are so vulnerable as individuals is due to the fact that we are deeply social beings and consequently utterly sensitive to judgment, self-judgment, the judgment of others. Now the the formation of this social character in our being, in our existence, can be traced back in terms of individual development, in terms of ontogeny. So this social character in ourselves can be traced back to our formative years, where we basically come to know ourselves, as individuals, as agents with intentions and feelings, as we share attention with our parents. Because our capacity to share attention with others will allow us to recognize others as separate individuals who possess intentions and judgments on their own. And this is how we will be able to differentiate ourselves and to recognize how the others relate to situations and how they judge situations and things. When a parent points to something, the child can follow the pointing and can read the intention of the parent. And this is possible through sharing their attention. So this is how the sense of a self emerges, essentially. And the problem could be that when a sense of a self emerges and co-evolves with our capacity to share attention with others, then this self-awareness needs some grounding, needs to be grounded somewhere. It cannot just float and be a free-floating entity without some, meaningful anchoring. It needs some grounding, and the self will find grounding in its social roles, in the social games in which it participates. And as I say, the problem could be that when we find our grounding in the social roles and games we play, we tend to maintain that grounding by taking it too seriously. By taking, in other words, ourselves way too seriously. And that can cause problems. And paradoxically, when we take ourselves too seriously, we don't really have a clear sense of the true contingent nature of ourselves, of ourself. And that can have negative consequences, like when, for example, we interpret as arrogant and dismissive the self-reliant behavior of people sometimes. When we project our insecurities onto others and interpret their candid and sincere behavior as arrogance and dismissiveness. Because sometimes stability of character makes sense from a perspective that is framed in insecurity or framed by instability. It makes sense as insensitivity and arrogance. When I don't have a clear sense of myself and I take my performative self too seriously, and when my locus of control is external to myself, when I define myself with reference to the judgments, opinions, and gestures of others, when my self-esteem depends on the feedback from others, when I orient my life according to expectations, I can easily take things personally and sometimes misinterpret the behavior of more honest and self-reliance people. And basically this is how we can blame others and project our shallowness onto them when instead of engaging their strength we project our weaknesses, negative feelings that come from our weaknesses. And in order to avoid this, we have to realize how contingent our self is, and that it's not something absolute. And even if it is woven and suspended in the social web, it shouldn't be defined by the social practices it participates in and performs day to day. And in order to nurture a flexible and resilient self, first of all, we need to become unafraid of discomfort, of interpersonal and intrapersonal discomfort as well. We need to care less about what others might think of us, or what we sometimes think of ourselves in negative terms, and rather we should focus on our capacities, and we should become more familiar with our performative and contingent self. Because when we have a clear sense of ourself and of our capacities, then the judgments of others won't disturb us. Rather, we will open to the opportunity for growth that those judgments, those critical comments afford us. And then we also need to be willing to accept and be comfortable with our natural imperfection, which after all makes unique us, which which makes us unique. In a way, sometimes self-loathing is just a self-justifying way of not taking responsibility for oneself and the risks involved in taking that responsibility. But that's another topic. So, and perhaps one other important thing to do is to focus on our strength and capacities and try to bring them to bear on our everyday activities and interactions. So offer the fruits of our capacities for the others.